Shalom. Welcome again to Secrets of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address. Thank you very much for joining us. If you'd like to make a comment or suggestion, please email me at rabbiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com. Visit the website, jewishsacredaging.com, and the Facebook page, and we'll be happy to receive all of your concerns and suggestions and comments as we deal with things in this life. Because for the next couple of minutes, we're going to perhaps ease our way down the road into perhaps aspects of another type of life. And I'm very happy to welcome back to the microphone and to Secrets of Meaning an old friend, Rabbi Dr. Simcha Raphael, the founder and director of the Da'at Institute. And for the purposes of today's conversation, the author of a new book in his ongoing cycle. The book is called Spirits, Ghosts, and Dybbuks.
Afterlife Journeys in Yiddish Lore.
Afterlife Journeys in Yiddish Lore. We'll get to the Yiddish in a couple of minutes. Simcha, it's good to see you. How you doing?
Always nice to be here. Always nice to have conversations with you, Richard.
How's the family? How's Razel? Everybody good? Everybody healthy?
We're alive. My kids talk to me. Life is creative. Baruch Hashem.
Then you're ahead of the game. We're ahead of the game.
That's right.
If I remember correctly, and as you point out at the beginning in the introduction of Spirits, Ghosts, Dybbuks, etc., this emerged out of the masterwork, which I think is now in its third publication, of the Jewish Views of Afterlife. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Talk to me how you decided to pull this particular section out. Why?
Well, here's a little bit of the background. When I was writing the original manuscript, I was late getting it in, and Arthur Kurzweil, who was my editor at the time, said, "Get the damn book in already. You're past deadline." I said, "I still have to write one more chapter on spirits, ghosts, and Dybbuks." He said, "That's a different genre of literature. That's not Sefer Kodesh, sacred texts like rabbinic and biblical and even Maimonides and Kabbalah. Just get the book in." So the original Jewish Views of the Afterlife did not have that material in it. When it came around to another edition, actually the third one, they said, "Do you have some new material you want to add?" So it had been in the cooler, some of the research I did. And so I spent well over a year researching the material, and it came out as a chapter in Spirits, Ghosts, and Dybbuks in Yiddish literature. I have been doing this Jewish Life, Death, and Transition series with a publisher named Albion Andalus, and they have so I was able to get permission from the publisher to use this chapter and revise this chapter somewhat and create a separate book.
Okay, so let's to make sure people, because I guarantee there are people who want to get a hold. This is part of a series, correct?
Albion Andalus, ALBION-ANDLUS, and on Amazon, they have a Jewish Life, Death, and Transition series, and this is, I think, the 8th book in that series.
Okay, and this book is available through Amazon, in bookstores, and also.
What's a bookstore? Oh, that's an offline bookseller.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So it's them called Brick and Mortar. They still have a couple of them around because I run up significant numbers of bills in one. The website, if somebody wanted to contact you on the website to get more information about this, or to perhaps bring you in as a scholar, because I know you do that, what's the website to contact you?
daatinstitute.net, DAAT institute.net, and DAAT is a Hebrew word for knowledge. It's also an acronym for Death Awareness, Advocacy, and Training. So daatinstitute.net is my website, and there's all kinds of resources. There's a bookstore. There's information about my teaching. There's recordings of previous podcasts I've done with Rabbi Richard Address. So it's a good resource.
So Spirits, Ghosts, and Dybbuks, drawn from this unbelievable reservoir of Yiddish folklore. Talk to me a little bit about, because this is the whole Yiddish culture and where this springs from. Give me a little history of this.
Okay, here's a bit of the background. When I wrote Jewish Views of the Afterlife, I said, with modernity, with Haskalah, the Jewish Enlightenment, teachings on afterlife in Judaism disappeared. And most of us grew up with this sense that Jews believe in life and the living, the here and now. We're not so interested in afterlife. And of course, that turns out to be a modern misconception, because in the pre-modern period, there were always teachings about life after death. And as I continued teaching, I realized that it's not that they disappeared with modernity, Haskalah, and with all due respect, Reform Judaism, right? But that they began to seep into the literary creations of the Yiddishists, the Yiddish authors. So part of the work that I've done over many years, I really call it spiritual archaeology. It's like digging up these lost traditions. Well, there was a lot of interesting material to be found in the writings. First, the earliest one, the Maisa Buch, is in the 1700s, but particularly with Isaac Bashevis Singer and Ansky and Shalom Aleichem, you really get these motifs around the interaction between the world of the living and the world of the dead.
So, and I want to move in that direction, but a couple of definitions, just in case somebody skipped that class or, didn't get some of the vocabulary. One, what's a Dybbuk?
Just in case they didn't see the movie The Exorcist.
Correct.
So
A great movie, by the way.
The Dybbuk, etymologically, is from the same word as glue, dovek. And so it's a spirit attachment. A Dybbuk is a spirit that has not been able to successfully reincarnate, or if you will, or move beyond into the heavenly realms, and is sort of stuck and tries to reattach itself to a living person.
And now you referenced this before in the introduction, the Masa book. What is that? Because that has a huge play in your book.
The Maisa book. Okay, so I began to look at when does Yiddish begin to get created as a literary language, because Yiddish is sort of a hybrid language of Middle High German and Hebrew, and it really emerges in the Ashkenazi community from the 1600s on, though there are some earlier antecedents. But in terms of written form, the Maisa book is one of the first, I guess, post-Gutenberg Galaxy printing press Yiddish publication. And it's a compilation of, 180 stories, some of which are drawn from Talmud, some of which are drawn from some of the Ashkenazi communities that really have all kinds of different stories. But I use it particularly because there were some ghost stories or spirit attachment stories, and apparently the first known Dybbuk story appears in there.
So you write about in this the story about and in Simcha's book there are lots of stories that illustrate what he's talking. You write about Judah Hanasi and his story about returning home every Shabbat.
It's a sweet little story. He says, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who was one of the leaders of Mishnaic Judaism in the 1st, 2nd century, he is said to be the compiler of the Mishnah. He says, when I die, I'm going to come back. So every Friday night, you put a nice Shabbos tablecloth on. You order a good challah from Roland's Bakery or from wherever you get your challahs from, and I'll show up and say Kiddush with you. And so there are reports that actually he did that. Now, we don't know whether he showed up in spirit form or in physical form, but the legend goes that he did. And then there's a knock on the door, and a neighbor comes by, and someone says, Rabbi is around. He was known as Rabbi. Rabbi Yehuda's here. We can't let you in now. once he got outed, he never came back again. He either he didn't want to freak out the neighbors, or he decided it wasn't safe to stay. But there's that side of the story was told. When I look at it through the lens of having read through afterlife texts for 30 years, my question is like, what's the Jewish philosophical teaching about what happens to consciousness after death? There's a wonderful teaching in the Zohar, mystical commentary on the Torah from Guadalajara, Spain in the 13th, 14th century, where it says, for 7 days, the soul goes to and fro from his home to his former grave. Meaning there's an intermezzo period after death when the soul potentially sticks around. There are also teachings about how the soul has more of a connection with this realm for the first year, and then it leaves go of the angels come and remove their terrestrial garments and place upon them celestial garments. Meaning, what the working hypothesis here is that after death, there's still a part of us that keeps some of our terrestrial and some of our embodied identity. And it takes a while to leave go of that. So it seems that Rabbi Yehuda stuck around for a little while and then he disappeared. And many people report to me feeling a sense of presence in the early weeks, months. My mother-in-law, I remember, she said, after the first year, I feel his presence around much less of my father-in-law. So these anecdotal stories that people report are evidenced in stories like this in the book. Now, I want to say something. I am not selling belief. Because if I usually get somebody sitting in my lectures who's sitting like this, I don't believe in any of this afterlife garbage. So to you, I want to say I'm not selling belief, but I will sell you my books. Right? But at least we want to be able to understand what our tradition has to say, because there really is a dearth of teachings on life after death for contemporary Jews. You go to Catholics, they have teachings on afterlife. You go to the Hindus, they have teachings on afterlife. There's the Tibetan Book of the Dead. There's all kinds of teaching. And most Jews are really lost when it comes to thinking about this.
So is the 7-day Shiva period and Shloshim and then the year reflective of what you just said about the soul sticking around for a little bit right after death, and then gradually over a year, the earthly vestments are replaced with the celestial vestments? Is there any relationship in that?
There are texts that go like that. Well, first of all, we have a ritual. What do we do at the end of Shiva? Okay, we go on a diet. Yeah. That's why do we take the walk around the block?
That's where the trays come from, and that's where the trays come from.
We would take a walk around the block because we say we've taken this time out of time and now we're going to begin to return to our normal life. But as I learned it from my teacher, Reb Zalman, it's also saying to the soul, we can walk you this far and now you have to go the rest of your way on your own. And I remember when my father-in-law died, it was during Parshat Vayechi, the death of Jacob. And that Torah portion speaks of Jacob being gathered to his ancestors. So before we began to take the walk around the block, my wife said, who are the ancestors to whom my father has been gathered? And we mentioned some of our friends and relatives, and his first cousin was there, and he mentioned their mutual grandmother. And then we walked her around the block, and as if she was escorting the soul of her father to meet up with all those folks on the other side. Very good way of ending a Shiva for somebody.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah. Then there's another teaching where it says nobody enters into the heavenly Garden of Eden for the first 30 days because there's no person who didn't have some amount of sort of sin or impurities they have to figure out. But that's also that corresponds with the Shloshim.
Right.
Right. And then there are teachings about how after 11 actually after 12 months, the soul leaves go of its cleansing process in Gehenna and can enter into Gan Eden. And we say Kaddish. We say Kaddish for 11 months because we wouldn't want to think our parent got the maximum length of time in Gehenna. Though I have psychotherapy clients say my parents should have gotten 36 months in Gehenna.
I'm sure you do. And more. That's another story for another time. One of the, as you know, because you teach this all the time through the Da'at Institute, and it's da'atinstitute.net, not .net, is the still perception amongst many of our people that we don't believe in angels and demons. That they believe that. We have four Uriel, Gabriel, we have four guardian angels, we have Satan, we have Lilith. Just give me a little.
So what we do Shalom Aleichem every week.
So give me a little bit of a taste of that part of our tradition that still in the Western world we sort of like, stay away from.
In a certain sense, with modernity, there was an attempt for Judaism to become a religion of reason. And so in Reconstructionism, it was any supernaturalism was weeded out. Hermann Cohen, who was sort of an early Reform Jewish philosopher, really tried to fashion Judaism as a religion of reason. So anything that couldn't be explained in rationalistic terms, like angels, demons, afterlife, spirits, states of consciousness, was completely ignored. But in fact, look, Abraham meets angels along the way. They say that there's a messenger, an angel who sends Joseph on his journey to Shechem. The way in which the Midrashes explain the two creation stories is one is with Lilith. Adam first consorts with Lilith and then with Eve, and then later he meets up with her again on Facebook, and Adam and Lilith have an affair midlife. So there's a whole wonderful mythology around angels. You need to get Rabbi Raphael, who teaches a lot more on angels than I do. I do the afterlife. She does angels and abracadabra.
Right, and I think you're familiar with that rabbi, correct? You run into her every once in a while.
And her Shekhinah oracle cards are coming out into the world soon. You'll have to talk to her more about that.
We will. So you this whole ambiance, as I said, rich reservoir of Yiddish lore and folklore. We're familiar with some of the popularization of this, because you write about it in the book, Frumacera. We've all seen Fiddler on the Roof. We've all seen the movie a couple of times. Every high school in America and the world has put on this. Okay.
Korea, Japan, India, everybody. I mean, everywhere.
So Shalom Aleichem emerges out of this, and Frumacera. Who is Frumacera, and how does she relate to the book?
First of all, Shalom Aleichem would have never heard of anything called Fiddler on the Roof.
Yes, we know that. Yes.
He wrote the Tevye stories.
Right.
Fiddler on the Roof was from the paintings of...
Was it Chagall?
Chagall. Yeah, it was Chagall. Thank you. Right. So Tevye wakes up out of a dream. And first there's hang on. He has one is from Sarah and then his title, and we don't think of Fiddler on the Roof as an afterlife story, but he's trying to marry off his daughter, and the first wife of the potential new husband, it comes and says, "Don't you dare!" and sort of freaks him out. And then his mother-in-law comes. And so what we see here is this notion that the deceased can appear to people in dreams. And that goes back also. That goes back to the Maisa book. That whole notion that the deceased can appear to us in dreams is very much part of our tradition. And people do have those experiences, and they say, forget about it.
Yeah, and dreams are so much a part of Torah literature. I mean, look at, as you know, the Book of Genesis is Dream City. And it's used as pivotal moments. It's used as transitional moments. The Joseph cycle alone. We don't put enough stock in that part of whatever the word is, not reality, but this other sense of this other world. And I think that's why your teachings are so important, because you open the door and tell the modern, sophisticated, whatever that means, Jew, saying, hey, this is part of who we are. This is part of our tradition. Don't be so quick to just say, oh, that's old fashioned, because in truth, you may not know this. You participate in this, but you don't think you do sometimes.
Right. Well, we're living through, just to step back a little bit and reflect in a broader sense. In the Jewish world, we're living through a time of a reclaiming of lost traditions. My teacher, Reb Zalman Schachter Shalomi of blessed memory, really brought old world Chabad mystical Judaism into the 20th and 21st century by bridging it together with humanistic psychology and transpersonal psychology and Sufi chanting. So we're developing traditions of Jewish mindfulness meditation practice. We're developing traditions of Jewish chanting. I'm doing the work on afterlife. Somebody you might want to talk with sometime is Rabbi Address, who you probably know somewhere along the way. He's a conservative rabbi. He was a Temple Sinai in Dresser for a generation practically. He's doing work on dreams and spiritual direction. So we're really reclaiming a lot of these I don't even want to say non-rational, but I want to say non-linear other states of mind, states of consciousness. Today you can go into a Reform or conservative synagogue and they'll do Shefa Gold's chanting, right? And they won't just do it. They won't just do Bishmat Kochai in the same memory, in the same melody every time, but they'll do something much more meditative, invite people to have contemplative kind of experiences. So we're reclaiming a lot of these traditions, and maybe they weren't lived exactly that way by our 16th and 17th century ancestors, but we're taking some of the wisdom that they had and we're salting it, we're flavoring it with a more contemporary nuance.
Do you find in your travels and scholar in residence things and your teaching that more people, or perhaps younger clergy, are introducing some of the historical and mystical backgrounds of some of the prayers? Because you mentioned Shalom Aleichem, and that they're talking to their congregants more about this instead of just opening, we begin on page so-and-so and we'll chant Shalom Aleichem, but saying before we chant, let's walk through what you're really singing about and what you're really praying about.
So.
Yeah, you think so?
Much more so. And even some of the older rabbis that sort of stepped out and went to do davening leader training intensives or did the Jewish Spirituality Institute are training people, and they're understanding that you can't feed people the pages of a cookbook. Reb Zalman would say the Siddur is a cookbook. You don't eat the pages of the cookbook. You use the Siddur to make a recipe. And so if you're doing the same formulaic prayer week after week, with all due respect to people who appreciate that keva, but if you do it without any life and vitality, you lose people. So we're trying to bring that material alive. Speaking of bring material alive, so that's right. My own. I want to go back to dreams. So when I was 21, my closest friend was killed in a car accident. And
You
very
write
early
about
on,
this in the book.
yes,
You write about this in the book.
and I felt a sense of his presence. What I haven't written about is he appeared to me in a dream and he said, there were 2 books written by death. And I always felt that was kind of prognosticative of my own life work.
And you have to be open to that too. I think before we start running out of time, I want to ask you about this vignette quote that comes towards, if I remember correctly, towards the end of the book. It's an I.L. Peretz quote. You write in the book, souls are divinely created, cleansed through life's suffering, and purified in Gehenna. Souls are divinely created, cleansed through life's suffering, great phrase, and purified in Gehenna. It's a Peretz thing. Walk me, what does that mean?
What would it be to imagine, well, the notion of like having a pure heart is embedded in our tradition. That we weren't born with original sin. We don't have that. We have a sense of a pure heart. And then why do people suffer? There's certain experiences along the way where we learn. There's certain ways in which we screw up in order to be able to become more kind people or more humble people. But nobody gets out of here without some unresolved psycho-emotional stuff. It seems that way. Try as we will. There's places where we screwed up. We may have some regrets. We may have some disappointments in ourselves. So Gehenna is not a geographical location. Gehenna is a process of purification. The fundamentalists would have us think that hell, which is the Jewish equivalent, Gehenna is more purgatory, but for the sake of discussion, we could say Gehenna and hell. The fundamentalists would have you think it's a particular place you go to. I remember when I would go and drive from, my son was at Indiana University, and I would drive from Bloomington to Indianapolis. There was a sign that said, avoid hell, repent. So I always had to check my GPS because I didn't want to make a wrong turn. But imagine having a moment post-mortem where you look at yourself in the mirror, unadorned and undefensive, and see, for example, all of the times, there's a teaching that says, in Gehenna, the sinners hang from their tongues. So what would it be to imagine you have to look in the mirror and see all the times you shot from the lip and were verbally abusive to people you loved? It might feel like hanging from tongues. Mm-hmm. And then there's the sinners hang from their organs. What would it be to look in the mirror and see all of the times you might have acted with impropriety in your intimate relationships and hurt people? So Gehenna seems to be a process where we have to clear out the unresolved psycho-emotional residue of our life and to be able to leave it go in order to enter into the celestial realms. So the Yiddish just wrote about that. The Yiddish just wrote about that. I don't know how much time we have. Should I tell the story of Shabbat and Gehenna?
Yes, we have a couple of minutes to tell the story.
Okay.
It's a good way to. It's a nice story. It's a good way to end.
Yeah, because I think what's really unique about this literature is that it also combines the emerging socio-political philosophy of the Jewish world in the 1800s and early 1900s. So there's a teaching that says on Shabbat, all souls are released from Gehenna. This is called Sabbath in Gehenna by Isaac Bashevis Singer. And so there's a meeting going on at Shabbat, and there's a meeting going on. There's a whole bunch of sinners and saying, we need to present a list of demands. We need to go to the angel Duma, who oversees over Gehenna, and say, we should have a 6-week vacation, and we should be able to have free love and not be kept away from our beloved sisters. We demand sex and free love, Seems, less work, more vacation time, more sex seems to be a reasonable demand for sinners in Gehenna. But somebody else says, you got to be kidding me. Nobody's going to listen to that. What we really need is we need an armed revolution. We have to arm ourselves. We have to wipe out the angel Duma. We have to storm the court of heaven. We have to break a few ribs and just take over Gan Eden with a revolution. And says, what are you talking about? Where are you going to get arms? Nobody's going to give us arms. As is usually the case with the free thinkers, nobody could agree. Somebody else said, you know what? We really should concentrate on culture. Forget these maximal demands like 6 weeks. We just need to say we're sinners with spiritual goals. We'll call it the Gehenna Dick. And when you sign a petition, the angels look at it and throw away. But a magazine they would read. The righteous in Gehenna are dying of boredom, so they need more. Forget your newspaper. A newspaper's going to burn in Gehenna. We need culture. We need theater. We can't not publish a magazine. Let's open a theater and organize a theatrical group, and we can use that as the best form of propaganda. And someone else says, you know what? We need a progressive political party. Culture's not going to solve our problem, but we need a progressive political party. They want us to have a 5-day week, Saturdays and holidays, but we just need to argue our point. So I said, wait. We need money. We need some money to be able to do this. Nothing like petitions, newspapers, theaters, cultures can be accomplished without money. And at that moment, what happens? Shabbos ends, and they're right back there exactly as they were in Gehenna with their suffering, with their torment. And this was all these dreams, all these just died away and didn't come to fruition. But today we could still dream to live a life that's more moral and ethical and imbued with a sense of holy. But what you see here is taking classical Jewish eschatology, teachings about the end of days and about the other world, and combining it with Buddhist philosophy. I mean, what was going on the Lower East Side and in Warsaw in those years? There was Jewish theater, there were Jewish literary publications. So I love this story because the images, which I didn't get into fully, but the iconography of hell is exactly out of the medieval texts. But Isaac Bashevis Singer brings to it a wonderful, timely. It's not contemporary as much as modern.
No, but you're also using that your background. It's also a period of time of socialist revolution, the beginning of Zionism, and turmoil in Eastern Europe and war. And so, yes, the first part has sounded a little bit like the 60s, Simcha, but what can you do?
Anyways, I had fun writing this book. There's some wonderful stories, and it really makes the point that we have a whole legacy of afterlife teachings.
And the richness of the Yiddish folklore that you speak of and obviously love with great passion. So thank you. And once again, Amazon website is?
Amazon is Amazon and daatinstitute.net, D-A-A-T institute.net. I have a bookstore there and love telling stories.
Simcha, thank you very, very much. Continued success. Stay healthy. Enjoy your time away. Say hello to Razel for me and let me know when the tarot thing comes out. To all of you, thank you very, very much for joining us again on today's edition of Secrets of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. We appreciate your time very much for being with us. If you'd like to support the work of the Seekers and Jewish Sacred Aging, go to the website, jewishsacredaging.com. There's a very conveniently located donate button, and we do appreciate your support. Likewise, if you'd like to become a sponsor of some of these podcasts, again, email me at Rabbi Address at jewishsacredaging.com. Seekers of Meaning is produced at the Broadcast Center of Lubetkin Media Companies in beautiful Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and a big shout out to our producer, Steve Lubetkin. Until we see each other again on the next Secrets of Meaning, take care of yourself, stay healthy, be well, and most of all, especially nowadays, be kind to one another. Shalom Todah.